Hi, everybody. Welcome to our program. My name is Tom.
Hello, Tom. I'm Stephanie.
And
nice
in
to meet
today's,
you.
it is you, and it's nice to see you as well. And today we've got a News Digest story. It's our News Digest unit for the month of March. And we're talking about Andy Warhol, the famous artist who died many years ago. But I guess one of his recent artworks has become popular once again, and it's called Fairies. But it kind of has a new twist, doesn't it?
It does. Andy Warhol was famous for making just average, everyday life things. He would take everyday life things like a can of Campbell's soup and turn it into art. He kind of was making fun at people for being willing to spend thousands, sometimes millions of dollars on pieces of art when he thought, art was in the eye of the beholder. Whoever looked at art and thought it was beautiful, then they could consider that to be a piece of art or a work of art. Here we're talking about one of Andy Warhol's old pieces of art. I think it's called Fairies, yes. And what one collective group or group of people who are artists themselves did in terms of an experiment, I think, of sorts. They wanted to see if they could sell something for a lot of money, even if it was just a copy.
Indeed. And of course, we're talking about the original sketch that was done by Andy Warhol. And then they made really exact copies of this particular sketch, so much so that it's very difficult to tell what is real and what is fake. And so they sold all the copies for a nice price, and that kind of makes it ambiguous. Well, what's the real one and what's the fake one? And this is all about art and what is art, and is it something that should be really expensive? Should it be really, should it be collectible items for rich people?
Only. Rich people only was his problem with it, yeah.
Okay, so we'll find out what this is all about in today's lesson. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's read through the entire contents, and we'll be right back. In November 2021, the Brooklyn-based art collective MSCHF deployed its latest weapon examining the true value of art, possibly real copy of Fairies by Andy Warhol. They took a simple sketch by the famous American artist, copied it in meticulous detail 999 times, and then sold the 1,000 pieces for $250, 7,000 NT dollars each. The art sold out quite quickly, meaning one person received a genuine Warhol piece, although it can't be authenticated. The art collective took pains to explain that its members neither know nor care which of the works is the original. It says people shouldn't obsess over a certificate of authenticity. MSCHF comprises around 20 artists that use their projects to make people confront what art is, what it can be, and what it should do. This jokey yet intellectual mentality led them to get their hands on an authentic Warhol. The cost of this acquisition has not been directly disclosed, but MSCHF's financial officer confirmed that the value of Warhol's original Fairies was about $20,000 or 556,000 NT dollars. The group programmed a robotic arm to precisely mimic the strokes Warhol used to make the sketch, then utilized a careful blend of light, heat, and humidity to age the copies until they were virtually indistinguishable from the original. This factory-style process would have been familiar to Warhol, who used the same methods during his lifetime. He saw art as a commodity, but not in the same way that art collectors seem to see it. In today's society, collecting art is a hobby reserved for the jaw-droppingly wealthy, and for them, it's invariably nothing more than a way to accumulate or manage wealth. Under no circumstances could the average person hope to afford a work of fine art, but if MSCHF has its way, that might be changing.
Okay, guys, let's take a look at the headline first. Because Fairies is a work of art, we're going to italicize it, so that's why it's in that special print we call italics. So, Fairies by Andy Warhol kind of the crazy artist that was very popular in the 60s and early 70s. He had really white blonde hair, I remember. And he loved to go to parties with the rich and famous. So you'll often see him portrayed in movies. Sometimes you'll see actors pretend they're Andy Warhol. He had kind of an insanely crazy life. So if you like to look at the lives of the rich and famous, Andy Warhol is someone you might take a look at. So he has this sketch called Fairies that this group in Brooklyn is a small area in New York City. We divide up the different areas, Brooklyn, Bronx, Staten Island, things like that. So this is a group that is based or located in Brooklyn. And it says here that he finds, or his painting or a sketch, it's a sketch, not a painting, finds new life through mischief. Mischief just means someone's trying to cause trouble. Maybe they're misbehaving or they're a troublemaker in class. You could call them a troublemaker, but through mischief or some sort of action that's supposed to tease or maybe make fun of someone. Now, I wanted to mention here, too, that a sketch is different from a painting. Tom knows more about that than I do because he's an artist, but a sketch is usually just a piece of paper that you've drawn by hand, something that you want to eventually turn into a completed piece of art. Maybe you're going to eventually add some oil painting to it, or maybe use charcoal or pen. But a sketch is usually kind of the rough draft of something that is eventually finalized and turned into a piece of art.
Or it could be just a work of art itself, just the sketch itself. If you take a pencil or a piece of charcoal or something and you look at something and you do a quick drawing on the paper, that's a sketch. But yeah, you could expand that into a full painting, or the sketch could just stand by itself. But again, they took a simple sketch by the famous American artist Andy Warhol and copied it in meticulous detail 999 times, and then sold the 1,000 pieces for $250 each, which is about 7,000 NT dollars. Would you pay 7,000 NT dollars for a copy of an Andy Warhol work? Well, you might or you might not.
Well, what seems to be kind of dishonest to me, if not outright dishonest, is the people buying this sketch didn't know they were perhaps paying for a copy. Only they thought they were getting the real deal. $250 is a lot of money. 7,000 NT, yeah, that's a lot of money. Well, the art sold out quite quickly, meaning one person received a genuine Warhol piece, although it can't. That's negative. Can't be authenticated. If you authenticate something, you prove that it's real, that it's not a fake, that it's genuine, you could say. So you can use authenticate as a verb, and in a moment, we're going to use it as a noun, or a noun that's acting like an adjective. So the artwork did sell out quickly, which I'm not surprised to hear, because Andy Warhol comes up with some kind of cool-looking, we would call it pop art. Andy Warhol was famous for doing pop culture things. Pop art is the short term for that, pop art. Now, it did sell out quickly, but again, you wouldn't be sure you had the real piece, the genuine piece, or just a copy.
Exactly. So they probably did not tell you whether it was the real one or a copy. But again, they copied it in meticulous detail. So meticulous means with a lot of attention paid to detail. You could say that someone is a meticulous worker, for example, if they pay attention to detail. They copied it in great detail and then sold each one for $250. Now, again, the art sold out quite quickly, meaning one person received a genuine Warhol piece. Again, it can't be authenticated. There's no way to really tell. The art collective took pains to explain that its members neither know nor care which of the works is the original. So if you go talk to these people at Mischief and say, hey, which one's the real one? Which one's the fake?
Yeah.
Well, they don't really know. They don't really care which one is real and which one is fake. It's all part of this particular project. And it goes on to say, it says people shouldn't obsess over a certificate of authenticity. That's kind of their idea here. Yeah, if it's fake, if it's real, it shouldn't really matter. It should be just the piece of art, and you shouldn't be selling it at Sotheby's auction house for $50 million or whatever.
Yeah, Sotheby's is the famous London auction house that now has branches in other countries. I know there's one in New York City too. But yeah, if you're having something auctioned at Sotheby's, you're a pretty big deal, I would say. So if you obsess over something, it could be a person or maybe a sport or a topic, something that you love. That's all you can think about. That's all you talk about. Typically, the first time you fall in love, you obsess over that guy or that girl. And your friends probably get sick of listening to you talk about that person. So obsess about here. This group, this art collective, we're going to talk about Mischief. It says people shouldn't just, talk about or think about or care about a certificate of authenticity. A certificate, of course, is that document that you can get that is official proof that something's happened, like your marriage certificate, your divorce certificate. Maybe you went to a school to become a teacher, so you have a teacher's teaching certificate. Those are all certificates of authenticity. And they're saying it shouldn't matter whether you got the original or genuine Andy Warhol piece or not. It's just art.
It's an interesting concept, and of course they have the right to do this, but I don't think that's going to stop people from collecting art and selling it for huge amounts of money. And of course, lots of artists out there like buyers who pay high prices for their works of art. It helps them make money instead of having to wait tables in New York City. Okay, that brings us to the midway point in today's lesson. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher, and then we'll be right back to continue with our lesson.
Hello, everyone. 我是派老师，今天讲解的是3月份 Unit 3 Fairies by Andy Warhol Finds New Life Through Mischief。 同学喜欢艺术吗？说实话，老师自认一点艺术创作细胞都没有，从小到大作业成绩表现最差的就是美术。不过虽然无法创作，但具备欣赏美的眼光也一样有价值。话说回来，我顶多也只限于欣赏，并没有足够的财力珍藏。不过，根据这篇新闻报道，美国纽约 Brooklyn 的艺术团体 Mischief MSCHF 透过高科技，或许可以让艺术品收藏的代价变得更亲民。我们现在一起来看看学习重点，在第一段的第一句 In November 2021 这个句子，请同学看到后面主要子句 deployed its latest weapon 这个地方。好的，首先老师先跟大家解说 deploy 的意思。 Deploy 一般而言我们把它翻成部署。接着请同学看到第二个句子。第二个句子这里有一个 in meticulous detail。 我们知道说 in detail 就是详细的意思，那加了一个 meticulous， 请同学注意到 meticulous 的意思就是特别的注意细节，非常的小心仔细，而且很精确。再来请同学看到第三个句子 The art sold out quite quickly, meaning one person received a genuine Warhol piece, although it can be authenticated. 请同学看到这个 authenticate 中文我们可以把它翻译作鉴定真伪。好，请同学继续看到第四个句子 The art collective took pains to explain that 一直到最后的 the original。 这个句子有两个重点，老师要跟大家说明。首先呢，请同学特别注意到 take pains to 这个片语。所谓的 take pains to do something， 意思就是非常认真的做某件事。比方说 Almost all the girls took great pains to dress well for the prom. Almost all the girls took great pains to dress well for the prom. 大家都知道高中有毕业舞会，很多同学呢就会细心打扮，所以我们可以说很用心的打扮。All the girls took great pains to dress well for the prom. 很多的女孩子呢都为了这个毕业舞会用心的去打扮。好，再来呢，请同学看到这个句子有一个句型 neither nor， 请同学画起来。也就是说，他们的会员呢其实并不知道，其实也不是那么在乎 到底哪一个作品才是真品？好，除了这2个文法重点之外，老师也希望呢，同学注意到 the original， 在句尾这个 the original， 它的意思就是真品。相对于真品，那当然也有赝品。赝品的英文就是 replica， R-E-P-L-I-C-A。
We're going to take a quick break. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back, guys. It's our News Digest unit, and we're talking about a sketch called Fairies by Andy Warhol, and how a group of artists themselves, they came together and came up with this kind of funny idea to show people that whether you got an original or a copy of some piece of art, it shouldn't really matter to you. They sold the copies. There were 999 copies and then the original. And they sold the copies for as much money as they did the original, which is something that is never done in the art world. The original always gets a lot more money than a copy. I think most of us who've been to college bought posters of pieces of art that we loved and we put them up on our walls. I did. I loved this, a couple of artists, and I could never, ever afford the original because it was worth millions of dollars. So I just paid for a copy. Well, this group called MSCHF, or in English, we would actually just pronounce it mischief because it kind of makes that sound if you say those letters together quickly. But I know Tom, when he read the article, he just said MSCHF, but we would probably say mischief if we're in America. And it's funny that their name it sounds the same as the word that means to make trouble or to cause trouble.
Exactly, and we will continue with that pronunciation for the rest of our lesson today, mischief. So mischief comprises or is made up of around 20 artists that use their projects to make people confront what art is, what it can be, and what it should do. So that's okay. They're trying to get people to ask themselves, gee, what is art? What should it be? And what should it do? And what can it be? So that's kind of an interesting idea there. And this jokey yet intellectual mentality led them to get their hands on an authentic Warhol. Okay, so they have this kind of mischievous attitude. It's a jokey kind of mentality. Here we've got jokey as an adjective. It comes from the word joke, which means you're playing a joke on someone. It's not really true, but you're trying to get people to laugh and stuff like that. Of course, people tell jokes all the time. And this is kind of jokey, kind of fun, mischievous, you could also say. But it's also intellectual. So yes, indeed, it is trying to ask a pretty big question here about what art is. And this is their mentality or their way of thinking.
Yeah, mentality is one of our vocabulary words, and it's a particular way of thinking. We usually use it in the singular form. I don't usually hear someone say mentalities, but you talk about mentality when you talk about the way someone's viewing things or thinking about it. You could say a director has blockbuster mentality. He only wants to make movies that make a lot of money. And usually those blockbuster movies aren't very intellectual. They're usually action movies or maybe comedy dramas, but usually they're action films that are released in the summer. Like the superhero movies. You could also say someone has a victim mentality. That's very popular these days, especially the younger generation, who are just starting college or in college. They'll say, oh, poor me. I don't have a fair shot at getting a job. And, oh, look at this. They're unfair to me. If you have a victim mentality, you never take responsibility for anything in your life. You blame others for your failures. Don't be a victim, guys. But victim mentality, a way of thinking, that's what this mentality means. So they had an intellectual mentality. So even though they were joking around and kind of making fun of this, they were also asking some pretty deep questions like, what is art really? And what can it be? And what should it be? I don't think anyone can tell you what it should be, but what can it be? And do we have to define art in this particular way it's been with us for, hundreds of years, how we define art? They kind of want to just shake things up, change that around.
Indeed, and of course, in the past, art was done on paper or canvas and stuff like that, but what if they do art on the computer? You know, you can copy those and you never know which one's the original,
True.
Which one's a copy. So, yeah, that is kind of an interesting question there. So, yes, it is an intellectual mentality, and that led them to get their hands on an authentic Warhol painting or a Warhol sketch. So if something's authentic, it's the real thing. It's not artificial or it's not fake. I guess fake would be the opposite of authentic. Here's a painting, it's an authentic Picasso. No, it's not. That's just a copy, I can tell.
We'll often call something like that the real McCoy. McCoy's just a name. And for some reason, it became really popular. Oh, it's the real McCoy. If you hear someone say that, they're saying that it's authentic, it's genuine, it's not fake, or something that someone has copied. It's the real thing. So the cost of this acquisition has not been directly disclosed. So they didn't come out and just say, oh, by the way, we paid $100 million for this. It wasn't directly disclosed, but we kind of got some information through the back way, you could say, through their financial officer. He confirmed that the value of Warhol's original Fairies was about $20,000 about. So they're not going to actually tell you the exact price. Acquisition here is being used as a noun. You can acquire something. That's the verb form. But to use acquisition as a noun, it just means you're getting your hands on something. You're acquiring something. Acquire is A-C-Q-U-I-R-E, acquire. It's just a process of getting something. You can acquire different things. You can acquire knowledge and skills that you need. You can acquire money. The acquisition of wealth is a pursuit by some people. Or maybe the countries had a new acquisition of military jets. You could use it like that. Or it could be countable. The big company's newest acquisition is a small chain of clothing stores. Or the way we use it often in art is just talking about the museum's latest acquisitions, or their latest acquisitions are on display. You can go look at them.
Yep, the latest things that they got. So we don't know exactly what they paid for it, but someone appraised the value of the original sketch, and it was about $20,000. So they may have paid more than that. They may have paid less than that. We just don't know. And the group programmed a robotic arm to precisely mimic the strokes Warhol used to make the sketch, then utilized a careful blend of light, heat, and humidity to age the copies until they were virtually indistinguishable from the original. So if you mimic something, you copy it, you basically try to do exactly what that thing did originally. Maybe you could be mocking someone, perhaps you're mimicking something. So basically, in this particular case, they were copying the strokes that he used when he made the sketch. We say strokes when you have a pencil or a pen or a paintbrush and you put it on the canvas. That's a stroke. Like Chinese characters have strokes, how many characters or how many strokes is in this particular character, etc., etc. So they copied the strokes, they mimicked the strokes, and then they did something else. They used a chemical process here. They used a blend of light, heat, and humidity to age those copies until they were indistinguishable from the original. So if it's indistinguishable, that means you just can't tell the difference between one thing and another. The twins are indistinguishable. They look exactly alike.
Can't tell the difference. So moving on to the final paragraph, this factory-style process would have been familiar to Warhol himself, who used the same methods during his lifetime. Yeah, he reproduced his own artwork in a factory. He saw art as a commodity, but not in the same way that art collectors seem to see it. If something is a commodity, it usually just means something that you can buy and sell. We use it a lot in the stock market. Futures, commodity futures like rice and sugar, oil and gas are commodities we buy. Here we're using it in a countable way. You can use it countable and non-count. But he just thought These art collectors, wow, they really pay too much for this stuff. In today's society, collecting art is a hobby reserved for the jaw-droppingly wealthy. If your jaw drops, it means you're stunned, you're shocked. They have so much money, you can't believe it. And for them, it's invariably just means never changes. It's always the same. It's always nothing more than a way to accumulate or manage wealth. If you accumulate something, guys, you're usually collecting or gathering or acquiring something over time. And as time passes by, you get more and more of that thing. So he kind of didn't like the fact that only wealthy people could buy art. He wanted just the average Joe, the average Jane to be able to buy artwork too.
Yep, so under no circumstances could the average person hope to afford a work of fine art. There's no way they could afford to buy an expensive piece of work at auction. But mischief has its way. If mischief has its way, they might be changing. Well, I wish them luck with that, but I kind of doubt that. Human vanity is really hard to change. Again, those rich people are going to pay high prices no matter what they do, but that's my opinion. Okay, that brings us to the end of our explanation for today. Let's listen now to our Chinese teacher.
好，接下来请同学看到第二段的第一句 mischief 后面这个动词 comprises。comprise 的意思就是由什么组成。比方说，美国由50个州组成，那我们可以说 The United States comprises 50 states。接下来，请同学看到第二个句子，抱歉，是第三个句子 The cost of this acquisition， 一直到后面2万美元这边，请同学特别注意到 acquisition 是名词，动词则是 acquire。acquire 是购买、取得的意思，在商业脉络中，我们可以解释作收购。比方说 I managed to acquire all the books I needed. 我顺利的买到我所需要的书。I managed to acquire all the books I needed. 接着，请同学特别注意到同一句，在逗点之前有个动词，就是 disclosed。disclose 是揭露的意思。好，再来，请看到第四个句子 The group programmed a robotic arm to precisely 之后。好，这边呢，意思就是说，这个团体他们编写了程式，要利用机器手背精细仿造 Warhol 的笔触。那请同学呢特别注意到这个句子里面逗点之后有一个名词 blend B-L-E-N-D 是混合的意思，综合的意思。这里呢就等于 mixture M-I-X-T-U-R-E mixture。 好的，那再来这个句子最后面They were virtually indistinguishable from the original。 这一些所谓的赝品、复制品跟真的几乎无法分别出来。这边的 virtually 就是几乎的意思，也请同学要特别的注意。以上就是我们针对这篇新闻的文法重点所做的解释，谢谢大家。
Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. Thank you so much for joining us, and good luck with your future art collection. Or if you are an aspiring artist, we hope that you can sell a painting for $50 million at auction. From all of us here at English Digest, my name is Tom.
I'm Stephanie.
Goodbye.
Bye.